The George Floyd protests now, protests for racial justice. People are asking, what next? Assemblyman Charles Barron will be joining me in seconds to talk about this. Also in this program, Dr. Marilyn Fraser, CEO of the Arthur Ashe Institute, will be joining me to discuss mental health issues in light of COVID-19 and the stay-at-home restrictions. We'll also be hearing from Reggie Brown with another very interesting report. But first, the Black Lives Matter momentum. Assemblyman Barron, thanks for joining us on Brooklyn 45.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. These protests are continuing. What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, this is a historical moment. As you know, Sam, I've been protesting for over 50 years now, but I haven't seen anything like this in a long time. Not only the magnitude and the militancy of it, but the fact that it's in over 1,200 cities in America and 7 to 9 foreign countries, and it's been continuous over the last 3 weeks. So this is something different. This is a historical moment, and these are radical times calling for radical solutions.
Time magazine, they have this huge article, says America's long overdue awakening to systemic racism. Now, you've been talking about that for a while, but what do you think about this awakening as propagated by Time magazine?
Well, a lot of them are having this epiphany moment that all of a sudden now they see racism. But Sam, we won't be fooled by your just awakening to something that has been deeply ingrained in this capitalist system. See, everybody's talking about racism now, but they don't want to talk about the parasitic, predatory, racist, capitalist system that's ideology is racism, its institutions are racist, individuals may be racist, but the problem is a capitalist system that economically exploits and keeps us and Black people and brown people in domestic colonies. That needs systemic change.
What do you suggest as far as that systemic change is concerned?
I suggest that we not go for these watered down reforms called criminal justice bills. We didn't do all of this to know the background of police officers that are murdering us and killing and beating us up. That's not going to stop them. We didn't do all of this to ban the chokehold that I've been fighting against since 1978 with Arthur Miller, who was choked, 1983, Michael Stewart, who was choked, Eric Gardner, who was choked. They've been talking about that being against police policy. We didn't do all of this so that you can now have a 911 bill. You call a 911 on someone who uses that, a white woman who in a racist way used it against a Black man in Central Park. Historically, white women have charged Black men with false crimes and causing death, as in Emmett Till and as in Tulsa. White woman said she was raped. Rosewood, white woman said she was raped. All lies, the Scottsboro brothers. So we don't want a bill that first was, it would be a hate crime. Now it's, you can sue. So we need an independent prosecutor with teeth, not a special prosecutor under this attorney general who will not prosecute police. We need an elected civilian complaint review board with the power to investigate, subpoena, and mete out some of the lower penalties, offenses. And we need community control over the police.
This is not meant to be an aside, but I was listening to the President of the United States saying he's not going to watch the NFL if there is going to be kneeling. And he describes it as a lack of respect for the flag and the national anthem. I want to hear your view on that.
Let me tell you about this flag that people want to honor so much. You know, the hypocrisy, how they immediately want to get rid of the Confederate flag. But when Betsy Ross was stitching the American flag, we were catching stitches in slavery. The American flag has been more racist than the Confederate flag. The Confederacy didn't last much after the Civil War, but the American flag, the red was our blood. The white was the white people who inflicted it upon us. So if you have a flag made for, remember the 13 stars for the 13 colonies that liberated themselves from Britain because they wanted to maintain the institution of slavery, and England was abolishing it. This is the flag to me that is most racist. But come on, Sam. We're talking about radical systemic change. We don't really care what this president does or doesn't do. But the movement today was so powerful that it got Nancy Pelosi to take a knee with kente cloth, which was embarrassing. It got Roger Goodell, the commissioner of football, said, hey, I'm sorry, Colin Kaepernick, you were right, because they're scared. It had so many things happen. All of these watered down bills we had for decades that wouldn't get passed. They're passing them all now. And the governor's talking about making Juneteenth a state holiday. Now,
I was going to talk to you about that.
They asked me what I thought about that. I said, well, tell the governor he's a hypocrite, because the descendants of those enslaved, and that what Juneteenth is honoring, you don't want to pay the $4 billion to our African children who were discriminated against with the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. You don't care about the descendants, because during this pandemic, this coronavirus, you sent a ship to the white community with 1,000 beds, and they only used 200 and sent 800 back, when the black community, where these African descendants were, that you want to have a holiday for, you discriminated against. When I approached you and the state assembly, we need an anti-poverty, a multi-billion-dollar anti-poverty bill. You gave $25 million to the African descendants that you want to make a holiday for. You cut $2.5 billion from Medicaid that the African descendants, poor people, need badly. You took $400 million out of our hospitals. You rolled back the no cash bail law so that more of us Africans, of the African descendants that you want this holiday for, will now be in jail, and it's a death sentence now because of the coronavirus. Hypocrite.
I guess he's going to be listening to you. What is your alternative? Well, yes, we now have the holiday, Juneteenth. Actually, a lot of people don't know the history of the June and the Teenth.
Okay.
What is that history in a minute?
Sure. First of all, the alternative is reparations, not a Juneteenth holiday, or in addition to a Juneteenth holiday. Hey, Governor, I have a reparations bill in Albany that has 35 people signed on to it. Say that you would support that if the Assembly and the Senate passes it. But Juneteenth, you know, that's not really the accuracy. They said General Granger, a white general, came to Galveston, Texas, and these were the last enslaved Africans in 1865 in June. They didn't know that the Emancipation Proclamation freed them. So he came and read it to them, and they said, oh my gosh, we're free. And that was supposed to be the last vestiges of slavery. Lie, not true. What happened is the African soldiers, they were losing the war. The North was losing the war. And in 1862, when they were losing the war, they said, let's free the Africans in the Confederate States. So the Emancipation Proclamation said all of those states that were in rebellion, the 10, 11 of you that left, and you were under the Confederacy of Jefferson Davis, which he had no jurisdiction over, your slaves are free. And the ones that stayed, 5 or 6, Maryland, Kentucky, you could keep your slaves. So the ones that he had the jurisdiction to free, he said, since you didn't rebel, you can keep your slaves. And then the African soldiers got together, and they went from plantation to plantation in the South saying, we're free. 10, 20, 30,000 of them, they freed us. And they got to Galveston, Texas last. It wasn't that we were sitting there not knowing we were free, because the Emancipation Proclamation didn't free us. the African soldiers did. So when they got to Galveston, Texas, 10,000 of them, they ran out the 4,000 rebel troops and the governor and freed their people. And that wasn't the last enslaved Africans, because the ones in the slave states that stayed still had slaves. Slavery was abolished in 1865, was ratified the 13th Amendment in December, not June. But we celebrate it because we don't celebrate the 4th of July. Because when they were celebrating the 4th of July, we were enslaved.
Assemblyman Charles Barron, historian Charles Barron. I love it. Let's talk about the importance of supporting Black businesses. Yes, we are free, but we're not. Lots of people are saying we're not supporting Black businesses, so we're not exercising our freedom.
Well, you know, you got a good point there, Sam. And I think that Black businesses should be more collective, more socialistic, more communalistic than capitalistic. A part of the problems with Black capitalism or Black businesses following the same structure of capitalism, that it will benefit a few Black individuals, but it won't benefit the community as a whole. So what we need to do is get into more cooperative economics, more worker cooperatives where we collectively own it, as we need to get into community land trust, so that that dollar that these rich corporate developers pay for land, we should get the land for $1 in a community land trust, and then have our businesses determine what kind of enterprises we collectively want to have on that land. And then if we do that collectively, and where the whole community benefits, and we have a community economy where the dollar passes through our community 15 times before it leaves, instead of once from you to Kentucky Fried and out. We need to have that kind of collective concept of economic self-determination for the entire Black community. Then when the virus hits and we become unemployed, then when the virus hits and Black businesses are shut down, we could collectively respond to it, instead of me trying to help Black businesses get the stimulus loans from banks that are rejecting them. And now I got to intervene to make sure that they get the loans that turn into grants if they use the money for staff and business purposes. So it needs to be more collective.
How do we manage this collectivity? How do we manage that thrust?
That's a good question, Sam. And the first thing is to be in agreement that me and Sam working together with 10 other people, and all of us putting 100,000 in, so we have $1 million. And then we form a worker cooperative where you move from this vertical ownership of businesses to the horizontal ownership of businesses, where it's more collective. We have to trust each other. See, we don't trust each other. All right, Sam, we got a collective. Whose name is gonna be on the bank account? So we got to learn how to collect each other, trust each other, form small cooperatives.
There are some people who will have a negative position on that and saying that's all rhetoric. How do we go beyond that? How do we go from there? There are some people who are scared. They're scared to trust other Black people. They're scared to put their monies in Black businesses. And a lot of Black businesses, they say, are too small anyhow to benefit from all this.
Because they're alone. They're by themselves. I say rhetoric, read your history. How do you get in the 21st century 1.1 trillion, the largest consumer capital accumulated African community probably in the world, and you don't control not one community? But in 1923, we controlled Tulsa. Or right after enslavement, read up, what's his name? Tunis Campbell. They gave him islands in the Sea Island, land. He developed it. We had a whole community. We owned everything. How do we own all of that stuff back then and come up now? We don't own anything. Not rhetoric. We got to change this reality.
And now it's over to Reggie Brown. How has COVID-19 and isolation affected the mental health of so many people? People are saying life is scary right now. Dr. Marilyn Fraser, who is CEO of the Arthur Ashe Institute, is my guest to discuss this. Dr. Fraser, welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you. It's wonderful being here. Thank you for having me.
Why is life so scary?
Oh my goodness, so much has happened within the last couple of months. We've been going through so much, right? We've been going through COVID-19. This is a disease that a lot of people still do not know a lot of things about. We've suffered so many deaths. African-American, Black folks, Black and brown people are disproportionately affected by that. And on top of all the things that have gone on with COVID-19, then we have had to deal with the atrocities of racism, right, brought to the forefront. So it does beg itself to be scary right now.
Yep. So let's get to the point. What are some of the mental health issues arising out of this COVID-19 and staying at home?
I think a lot of people are not used to staying at home, and at first we thought we would be at home for a shorter period of time. And just thinking about being in a crowded area for folks that have to deal with children, that they're usually used to the children going away to school and not being at home for the full day. And dealing with that, dealing with their own mental health issues in terms of being in isolation, not being able to do the things that you would normally want to do, going out to walk, having to put on masks. Some people feel claustrophobic behind a mask, right? Having to put on gloves to touch things, and all the different guidelines lends itself to that. But the isolation of even not being able to communicate with coworkers, for friends, not being able to see each other, to touch, hug. You know, I think grandparents and parents right now, they are really suffering a lot because they're not able to communicate with their grandchildren the way they normally would. And grandchildren not being able to communicate with their grandparents. So it is a lot. And then losing family members, losing friends to a disease that isn't fully understood and really not, we do not know what all the things, what everything holds in terms of the future where that is concerned. And it's a disease that we don't have a cure, we do not have a vaccine. So it is scary and it will cause us to be alarmed and anxious.
Talk to this point about mental health being as important as physical health.
It is, because oftentimes we think of mental health as something that's so remote, right? You think about physical health and you think about diabetes, you can understand that. You can understand high blood pressure because it's easier to measure, so to speak. And mental health, when we talk about health, we should talk about overall health, right? Because our mental health contributes to whether sometimes how we react to certain things and how the outcomes are for certain diseases and the stress factor. So mental health is really as important as social support and mental well-being. Those things are just as important as the physical health. When we think about cancer and diabetes, and we think about heart disease, we think about asthma, and all of those diseases and all those ailments have some kind of mental component too, right? In terms of how we deal with things, that's where the mental health piece may come in.
So what kind of tips would you give to people who maybe your clients, maybe your organization's clients? What kind of tips would you give them to deal with these mental health issues or to avoid mental health issues?
I think relaxation, a lot of people have stated that even to our team, that we need to take numerous breaks. This is not business as usual. You need to take time for yourself, really employ certain self-care tips, taking time to relax. If you need to go for a walk, doing those kind of relaxation things for people that believe in faith and prayer, and for those that believe in meditation, different relaxation techniques at this time. Call and still contact people, because the contact is important. If maybe some people are doing Zoom calls with their families, that's a wonderful way until you're able to see each other in person. having check-in meetings with your team and your staff to find out how people are doing. Just even calling someone to ask how are you doing, you know, checking up on people. Those things are really important. Making sure you're eating well, not overeating. I think a lot of times you're running to the refrigerator because it's there and it's close by. Make sure you're eating well and really hydrating yourself, drinking lots of water, all of those things.
I was going to talk about the drinking water because I don't drink enough water, even though there's a long bottle. So that's important, as you said.
It is important. It is important. Make sure we're drinking water and hydrating ourselves. Make sure we're taking time just to relax, you know, downtime.
Talk to us about the work of your organization, the Arthur Ashe Institute.
So the Institute was, as you know, created by Arthur Ashe, founded by Arthur Ashe just months before he passed. And we are focused on addressing health inequities and looking at things through a social justice lens, making sure people are linked to services, that we are doing health promotion work, also looking at increasing the number of people of color in the health professions. So we have a health science academy program for students that are interested in the health professions, and we're trying to create a pipeline because we know that if we start earlier on and getting students really engaged in the sciences, they're likely to continue in the sciences, know more about the sciences, and go into careers in the sciences. And we know for people of color that they return to those communities from which they come, and they would serve in those communities. So it's always important to have that on our plate as well. And with our health promotion, you know, we go into beauty salons and barbershops and faith-based organizations and meet people where they are with health messages. And the linkage to service as an important piece, making sure that we're linking people to the resources that are available out there. Without COVID-19, it's a challenge raising funds for the work that we do. But we hope that others would see the value of the work and really help to support the work by providing the needed resources. I've had colleagues who have had to go through a really tough time during this period because of the same question you asked, not getting the resources that are needed to do the much important work.
I know COVID-19 has affected the distancing, that close relationship between parents and kids. And a lot of children have been complaining that even though their grandparents may be around or the parents may be around, they hear on the news that there must be this 6 feet. How do you address this? Do you get any complaints like this, or how would you address it?
It's hard. Actually, my mom herself, she mentioned that it's just difficult being in this period where you're not able to see, you're really not able to interact with your kids, because we come from a family that we hug each other, and when we meet and you kiss each other. And I stay away, as much as I can, and it is a difficult thing. So I think the Zoom calls, having the conversations on the phone. I speak to one of my sisters every day, and we have those conversations on the phone. And I tap into my parents, and I know my parents with their grandkids that are all over the country, but the ones that are closest to them in New York, they're not able to visit them. So that has been difficult. But phone calls and Zoom, and any thing that you can do in terms of FaceTiming and Skyping and all those other things.
And finally, how do people get in touch with you again? Because we talked about the work of your organization, but how do they reach you?
They can reach me at my organization at www.arthurasheinstitute.org. That's the best place to reach me. And you can, send me an email. You can send an email at info@arthurasheinstitute.org. Okay.
Do you go out and lecture to community organizations?
I do. I go out and lecture. That's one of the best parts of my job. Although I have an executive administrative position, I really enjoy going out into the community and talking about health and talking about the various things that has happened within our communities. And having people ask me questions and learning from them, I really enjoy that tremendously. So if there are opportunities that you would like me to talk to community members about various things about health, I'm open to that.
So you heard, you can get in touch with Marilyn Fraser, Dr. Marilyn Fraser from the Arthur Ashe Institute. Thank you for being a guest on our program.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure being here. And I thank you for inviting me to be a part of this program today.
You're very welcome. And now I believe it's time to go to Don Dre.
Hello, and thank you for watching. Brooklyn 45 is a 501c3 not-for-profit, and we welcome your support. Check out our website, brooklyn45.com, and feel free to donate or share it with your friends and family. Have any comments or questions? Send them to our Facebook, facebook.com/brooklyn45tv. If you have any questions or topics you think we should cover next, shoot me an email over at brooklyn45tv@gmail.com. Thank you and again for watching.
Okay, that's Don Dre Bullock. Make sure now that you shoot him some emails and shoot him a Facebook comment or Facebook request. This is Brooklyn 45. On behalf of our team, I'm Sam Tate.